Well, hello, and here we are with the answers to the 69 quiz. Um, let's get going straight away. Trivia, biggest selling single of the year in the United Kingdom. Unbelievably, it was Sugar Sugar by the Archies. Unbelievably. Uh, Look at those wonderful songs around in 69. No matter what else happens, instead it's a fictional cartoon band from the Archie show, not even a particular big show in Britain, um, about the exploits of people at Riverdale High, releasing a single that beats all of the others that year. Disgraceful, disgraceful. Never mind. Right, trivia. It was, of course, Lulu who sang Boom Bang a Bang. But, you know, although I said the UK were the winners, you may well know this, but it was a four-way split in 1969, and they had no way of dealing with this and proclaiming a winner. They had no tiebreak at all. So the UK, Spain, Netherlands, and France all were declared winners at the same time. This was actually only the second win for the United Kingdom, after, of course, Sandy Shaw and Puppet on the String. But at the time, I think it was France's fourth. France had the most at the time. Okay. Third trivia, Miami concert. Jim Morrison was arrested because of profanity and indecent exposure. Now, of course, the story is that in what was if you read any accounts of it at the time, was not a very, there was a lot of unpleasant feeling. It was hot, it was sweaty, it was in a big aircraft hangar. Jim was drunk, not unusually. The police had already got involved quite a bit and threatened them, and the Doors seemed to have this following around everywhere. And Jim Morrison threatened to take his penis out. And now, according to who you talk to, he either did or he didn't. He was arrested because he did. But Ray Manzarek, for one, absolutely refutes the idea that he did. And many others in the audience said they didn't see him do so as well. So there you are. Did it happen? Did it not? That's why he was arrested. Okay, now the Ultimate Free concert. Meredith was Hunter was murdered during the song Under My Thumb. We'd already had Sympathy for the Devil just beforehand, but it happened there. Now, it's often held up to be this appalling murder, this appalling, dreadful situation here. As many people as well who suggest, who are on the stage and around, that Meredith Hunter was a danger. He did pull a gun, remember, as well. So it is a bit of an unclear incident, but obviously a very unpleasant one at the same time. Horrible. But there we go. Still, people say the end of the 60s. And of course, the Stones had their own album out in 69, Let It Bleed. So that's certainly one worth listening to. It's one of my favourites of the Stones album. I'm not a massive Stones fan, but it's one of my favourites of theirs. Now the Monkees, most people think Head was the end for the Monkees in 68, but no, they released 2 extra albums this year. But it was Peter Tork who had left the band. Peter Tork. Didn't seem to affect it too much, I have to say. 2 very good albums. Instant Replay is certainly well worth listening to. But the Monkees Present is my favourite of them. It had an interesting concept behind it. That originally it was going to be a double album, and a side of each of the albums were going to go to each of the Monkees. So they had a side each. And when Peter Tork went, alongside declining sales, they decided just to do a similar thing but push it into one side of an album. So if you listen to that one, it goes between Nesmith, Jones and Dolenz songs. Jones is really only singing other people's songs, to be honest. But it's an interesting concept, and it kind of works. Well worth a listen. Okay, naming the album. Right, what was that at the top? It was one of the great albums of 69, one of the great albums of all time, let's be honest. Nick Drake's masterpiece, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't feel it's his best, but it is for me. 5 Leaves Left. What a wonderful album. There, of course, because we have the group 5, and we have a man who is leaving, and then a man who's left. There we are. But definitely an album worth listening to and checking out. I honestly, I could just almost survive on that album alone for the rest of time. Number 7 is Basket of Light, the Pentangle thing, because you see it's a basket and it's got light in it, so it was a basket of light. Come on, you have to get that, don't you? Anyway, Pentangle, or the Pentangle, I think, as they were referred to then. It's a terrific album as well, absolutely wonderful, well worth listening to. For me, beats the far better known Fairport Convention albums of the year, to be honest. Now, what have we got at the bottom? We got a very soft pillow, and we have the Thanksgiving Day Parade. It's the soft parade. This is the Doors album. We've talked about Jim and his exploits in Miami, but this was their album for the year. Not the greatest album, certainly the weakest, I think. And most people seem to agree. Jim wasn't very involved in the writing. That may be one of the reasons why that was the case. But yeah, there's a lot of brass introduced and other ideas. It didn't really seem, I've never really managed to get into it. Then number 9, what have we got here? We've got Bayou Country, the one of the 3 albums released this year by Creedence Clearwater Revival. 3 albums in a year, quite amazing. Well, that's a picture of the Bayou, obviously, in Louisiana, and there's a picture of a country. That was where I was going with that one. 3 albums in a year, though, quite incredible. On this album, of course, is one of their best known songs, Proud Mary, which we all know from this, maybe even from the Tina Turner version, which apparently was written after discharge from the National Guard. Hence the kind of the opening lines, left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day. And apparently the intro is meant to imitate Beethoven's Fifth, which they were big fans of at the time. Intro to Proud Mary, I mean. Well, there you go. And what about number 10? Well, look, we've got some tennis players in the court. Then we've got a Crimson Curtain. And then we've got Martin Luther King. It's In the Court of the Crimson King. Again, for my money, King Crimson's best album. It's a quite fantastic album there. The cover design is always an interesting one. It was by a man called Barry Godber, who was a computer programmer rather than an artist. I'm not sure what a computer programmer did in 1969, but anyway. And sadly, he died just after the release of the album, so didn't get to see his influence. Okay, I hope you did all right with those. Let's get on to some lyrics here. What have we got? Tell my wife I love her very much. Of course, tell my wife I love her very much. She knows. Absolutely. David Bowie, Space Oddity. His huge hit that broke him and left him with a reputation of being a one-hit wonder for a very long time after that. Well, it's worth exploring the album that's now known as Space Oddity. It was originally just called David Bowie, like his previous album that Sank Without Trace was. Certainly not up to the standard of some of the others, but still cracking stuff. And a great song. At an old saloon on a street of mud, there at the table dealing studs sat the dirty, mangy dog that named me Sue. Yes, it is A Boy Named Sue, a Johnny Cash story song. Very witty, very funny, but not written by Johnny Cash. Interesting, not a Johnny Cash song. It was written by a poet called Shel Silverstein. So one of his best known ones isn't his. I suppose it reminds me of the Harry Nilsson situation, where Harry Nilsson, this singer-songwriter, but his 2 best known songs were covers, Without You and Everybody's Talking. There we are. So Johnny Cash, and there's his very good Live at San Quentin album up there. Maybe not quite as good as Live at Folsom Prison, but Live at San Quentin still a very good album. Always represents him best hearing him live. Just incidentally, Major Tom was just mentioning back in the character invented by David Bowie then for number 11. Came back twice more in Bowie songs. Many of us know, of course, Ashes to Ashes did the same. But then Hello Space Boy as well was apparently Major Tom as well. And it went further than that, of course. Peter Schelling in his Europop hit Major Tom used the character. KIA wrote Mrs. Major Tom. And there's speculation that that's what Rocket Man was about. Rocket Man by Elton John was using the character. Not sure I think that myself. I always thought Rocket Man was a kind of an analogy for what it's like being a pop star, a rock star. But anyway, never mind. Anyway, enough of me waffling on. Number 13, old Ebenezer thought he was Julius Caesar, so they put him in a home where they gave him medicinal compound, and now he's Emperor of Rome. Of course, the wonderful Lily the Pink by the Scaffold, the song that seems to go on forever. Number 14, if I'm laden at all, and I'm laden with sadness, that everyone's heart isn't filled with the gladness of love for one another. Yes, it's the Hollies. It's He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. What a wonderful song that is, which of course this came out this year. It's on the Hollies Sing Hollies. I think a reference to the fact they'd had an album earlier on in the year called The Hollies Sing Dylan. And He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, which has since hit the charts twice more, got to number 1 after being featured in a beer advert for Miller Lite back in 88, I think. And then, of course, was released as a charity single. Paul Heaton leading the crew on that, and again getting very high up there. Right, so I just did me some talking to the sun. I said I didn't like the way he got things done. I love this song. You gotta like Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, and that's it. I didn't like the way he got things done. He's sleeping on the job. Raindrops keep falling on my head, they keep falling. What a wonderful song that is. Okay, right, let's move on. Connections. What's the connection between Albatross Liquidated Adventures and Time Is Tight? It is, of course, they're all instrumentals. Okay, all instrumental. That's a bit boring, isn't it? But never mind. Albatross, of course, famously inspired the Beatles. The Beatles usually inspired other people, but later on the year in Abbey Road, Sun King is quite clearly a rip-off of Albatross, to be honest. Remember the anger when I first heard Sun King, thinking, how dare Fleetwood Mac have ripped this off, before realising I got it the wrong way around. And Liquidator, one for all Chelsea fans out there. Well, what's the connection between these people? Zager and Evans, Serge Gainsbourg with Jane Birkin there, the Archies, who we've already mentioned, and Thunderclap Newman. Well, if you got that they were all number ones, I'll give you half a mark. If you said they all got to number 1 in 69, because you're right. But they were all one-hit wonders with number 1s in 69. None of them had another top 40 hit ever again. One-hit wonder, number 1. So there we are. Right, no more connections. What's the connection between these songs? My Way, If Paradise Alpha's Nice, Love Me Tonight, and Please Don't Go. All of them were European songs that were rewritten with English lyrics. Now, My Way, famously, of course, was Comme d'habitude, a song that's so popular there was a bit of a kind of a competition to see who could write lyrics for it. And I'm sure many of you know the story that David Bowie was one of them. He wrote lyrics that were rejected. He apparently didn't take it very well, and wrote Life on Mars, which is a use of the same chord progression. So it's essentially a mini cover version of My Way, and 3 million times better as well. But yes, If Paradise is Half as Nice, it was an Italian song originally, as was Love Me Tonight, I think, and Please Don't Go as well, if you remember it. Not the K, what were they called? It wasn't the KLF, in the 90s, K something, some initial anyway, who also had that big number 1 with their awful song Please Don't Go, which is also a cover, but never mind. Let's move on to the picture round. Who have we got here? We've got number 19, we've got The Move. The Move, who of course spun off ELO afterwards, became ELO, the hub of that. But of course, there he is on the left there. There's the man himself. Not yet to know in 1969 that 4 years down the line he was going to become a very, very rich man indeed by writing I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day, which must make him a bomb every single Christmas. Number 20 is Peter Sarstedt, the man who wrote Where Do You Go To, My Lovely? Big number 1 hit. Not a one-hit wonder. He did have another top 20 hit, I gather, but nobody remembers it. 21 is, of course, Brian Jones. Very sad. This was, of course, the year Brian Jones died tragically after, you know, everything had fallen apart with the Stones. Very sad, because the Stones were his group to begin with, but there you are. He fell to pieces. 22. This was definitely the year of Sly and the Family Stone. Their album Stand was a real breakthrough album for them this year. 23, Alan Klein, certainly a candidate for Man of the Year in 1969, not necessarily for good reasons. The man who became the Beatles manager certainly had a great part in breaking them up, I would say, by driving a wedge right through the middle of them. And eventually McCartney was proved right, wasn't he? As they all ended up suing him. He was a crook. 24 is Sandy Shaw, the wonderful Sandy Shaw. Still going this year, still recording hits. And 25, I'm sure you got it was a Gibb, or did you get it was Morris? Absolutely. Morris got married this year. Got married to Lulu. How lovely. Okay, album covers. You must have got this one. Trout Mask Replica, Captain Beefheart. Now there is an album that's either worth listening to or not worth listening to ever again, depending on your view. Certainly a one-off. And what about this? This is a terrific album. Scott 3 and Scott 4 both came out this year and were, well, they weren't huge hits at all in the slightest. They were wonderful, wonderful albums, worth going away and listening to. This, of course, is The Who with Tommy, the first rock opera concept album. Quite brilliant. In many people's opinions, never did it for me, but there you go. 29 is Unhalf Bricking by Fairport Convention. And number 30, you may well not have got this. Early Can, The Can, as they were calling themselves there, with Monster Movie. Worth a listen, most definitely. Okay, now what was I playing you in the verses here? Number 31, the first one I played you was, of course, Sweet Caroline. I'm sure you all got that again. 69 was the year of Sweet Caroline. How about that? 32 was Pinball Wizard from the previously mentioned Tommy. 33 was The Israelites. This is Desmond Dekker. Yes, or as it's known to people of my generation, Me Israelites. Look it up on YouTube if you don't understand. But there you go, Desmond Dekker's. This is Desmond Dekker, a double album, a huge, massive album there with the Israelites on. 34, Wichita Lineman, Glenn Campbell. Stuart McConey has stated before that he feels this is the perfect pop song. There you go. You can find it on the self-titled, on the title, the album of the same name, Wichita Lineman, although a '68 album. As it came through there. 35 is Son of a Preacher Man. Of course, this was the year of the wonderful Dusty in Memphis. A terrific collection of songs, one of her best, I think. Okay, the Beatles round. The famous rooftop concert. The final song they played together in public was Get Back. It was the first one they played. They played three times. I think they played it twice to begin with in a row, and then they finished at the end with it as well. They did also perform Don't Let Me Down, the one after 909, I've Got a Feeling, and Dig a Pony. Apparently the only 5 songs they felt were good enough at that time when they went up to play the concert were performable enough. There we go. My dad's birthday too, January the 30th. He was 27 that day. Wow. What was unique about the release of the single Something Here Comes the Sun on 6th of October? It was the only non-Lennon McCartney A-side on a Beatles single. Okay, and double A-side as well at that. It's the only time Lennon and McCartney did not get top billing on a Beatles single. Famously, Frank Sinatra used to sing Something in his concerts and introduce it as his favourite Lennon McCartney song. There we go. The original choice of name for the album Abbey Road, named after a popular brand of cigarettes, was Everest, and there was at one point a plan to fly them all over there, to have the biggest band in the world next to the biggest mountain in the world. Not really thinking about the fact that that was a massive round trip just to take a few pictures. It, of course, fell by the wayside. And then The Order of the Four Beatles Crossing the Road. Here's where we get our promotion of Abbey Road, the greatest album ever made, in my opinion. The order, of course, as you can see there, was John, Ringo, Paul, George. Now, of course, this brought about the story of the Paul, or fitted in with the story of Paul is dead. This supposedly, for those of you who don't know, was a funeral procession that was. There's John as the priest leading the way. There is Ringo as the undertaker. There's Paul as the corpse, apparently because he had no shoes on, which apparently is something to do with death in many cultures. And also giving away it wasn't Paul, supposedly, because he had a cigarette in his right hand and he was left-handed. And then George finally as a grave digger behind. That was supposedly the idea. And of course, in the background, a Volkswagen Beetle. Now, to the Beatles, that was just incredibly fortuitous that somebody had left a Beetle in the background of the Beatles. But many others managed to notice that the registration plate was 28IF, and said, of course, it was a clue that they were leaving, that Paul was dead because he would have been 28 if he was alive. He was 27, but never mind. Don't let it get away a good story. And also the bizarre idea of why on earth in these conspiracy theories, it's ridiculous conspiracy theory ideas, does somebody go around leaving clues everywhere? Surely they don't want to hush it up completely. And think how much trouble they'd have had to go to. Anyway, never mind. I won't go on about it any longer. The final Beatles question was the last time they all performed together, the last song they all performed on together in a recording studio. Now, I made clear what I meant by performed on all together. And the answer is because lovely that they sang those lovely harmonies together as the last thing. After that, they did finish off the end, and people love the idea that the end was the last one they worked on. But Ringo did not work on the overdubs to the end at that point. And then the last song they worked on was I Want You, She's So Heavy, which they put together and edited at the same meeting at which they decided the running order of the album, but it was not what they recorded. And we got that long ago. So that's your Beatles answers. Right, covers, original artist from '69. Dancing in the Street, you know it. It was Martha and the Vandellas, and their surprisingly good album, Sugar and Spice, worth a listen. Another Motown classic there. Tommy Rowe, of course, did the original Dizzy, but it's not a very memorable name, is it? He did an album called Dizzy as well. I have not listened to it. I could not tell you what it's like. But there we are. Deacon Blues, I'll Never Fall in Love Again. That could easily have tripped you up there, because the tendency would be to think of Dionne Warwick, as she sang so many of those times. It was Bobby Gentry. Yes, Bobby Gentry of the fame of Oh to Billy Joe, one of those terrific. I love Oh to Bobby Joe. What a wonderful song that is. Billy Joe, sorry. Anyway, yes, it was her singing the original of I'll Never Fall in Love Again, which I could easily have put in the lyrics round, couldn't I? You know, the famous song about what do you get if you kiss a boy? A case of pneumonia. Never mind. And after that, he'll never phone you. Anyway, Norman Greenbaum did Spirit in the Sky before Doctor and the Medics. I know Gareth Gates did it many years after. Norman Greenbaum. And again, I've not heard the Spirit in the Sky album, but I've heard very good things about it. Must have to listen to that this week. Bananarama's version of Venus, which hung around forever, was of course originally Shocking Blue, who did Shocking Blue at Home this year. There we go. Right, we're nearly there. Just the movies. What was the song in these movies? Well, in Top Gun, it was You've Lost That Loving Feeling, of course. First of all, sung horrifically out of tune by Tom Cruise in that toe-curling karaoke scene, or singing chat-up scene in the bar there. And also over those credits at the end. You got to love Top Gun, haven't you? And every time I hear that build up, baby bit of You've Lost That Loving Feeling, always reminds me Goose comes up on screen. Poor old Goose. There's Something About Mary. Build Me Up Buttercup, of course, was performed by the cast as well over the credits at the end. So very much associated with it. You love Something About Mary, haven't you? The 40-Year-Old Virgin, probably the worst titled film I've ever come across. For a film that's very, very funny, indeed. Dreadful, dreadful title. And it finishes in one of the best scenes of all, in a bizarre version of Aquarius and Let the Sunshine In by the Fifth Dimension, which they all perform and sing the cast around the place. An American Werewolf in London, I'm sure many of you remember, of course, Bad Moon Rising. Famously, in American Werewolf in London, every song on the soundtrack has the word moon in it. There we are. And finally, Sister Act 2, a classic, of course, had Oh Happy Day by the Edwin Hawkins Singers in it. So there we go. There's your 50. How did you do? Do let me know, please. There's a new quiz coming up next Sunday. Please, please, please remember, I'm doing this to raise money. Please remember to visit this and just give anything you can, even just a couple of quid. Keep it rolling, keep it all rolling, keep the money coming in. Do remember to follow me on Twitter. Do remember to give me any feedback you've got, and please tell me on Twitter how you did, and let other people know, and subscribe if you've enjoyed it, and give me a like and put on a comment, and do whatever you can to get people coming along and enjoying it and giving money. The Christmas edition will be up very soon as well. Might well make it before next Sunday, so we'll have to see about that. I've finished putting it together. I think it's going to be a classic, and I look forward to seeing you with that then. Goodbye, everyone.